Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn about the learning process, steps in learning process, the learning curve, types of learning curve, causes of learning plateau, overcoming strategies of learning plateau, characteristics and limitation of learning plateau, educational implications. The learning process. In 1958, Fagin stated that learning is a sequence of mental events or conditions that leading to the changes in the learning. The learning process involves motive or drive an attractive goal and the block to attainment that goal. I am giving one example over here. A child is hungry. The drive is hunger here. He goes to the almirah when his mother has kept some sweet. He tries to open it but latch is too high. He looks here and there, notices a chair, pick it up and stand on it, open the latch, take the sweet. In this case, the goal of obtaining the food is very clear now. If he could have obtained the sweets without any difficulty, the activity would have ended without any new learning taking place. But there is a block. The latch is high. This block creates in him tension. He becomes uncomfortable. This situation leads him to seek solution to the problem and he took a chair. The learning has taken place in two ways. First one is he learned how to solve the problem. Second one is he learned a procedure that may be applicable to the similar problem. So this is called the learning process. Learning has four stages that are perceiving, deciding, acting and feedback. Perceiving is nothing but the inputs were often called as cues. Learner perceive or get an idea he has to be done and how perceive information and experience. Like direct experience is attract conceptualization. Learner perceives something new through different senses, direct experiences, and that learner use cognitive ability to identify the new things and learn new things. Second one is deciding. Deciding is nothing but the processing in the brain, how learner put information in his or her brain. Deciding involves taking consideration to a matter, identifying a desired and results, determining the options to get to the end results and then selecting the most suitable options to achieve the desired goal. Third one is acting. The acting is nothing but the output and movement for learning something. Acting in learning is transformative. Acting helps learner to develop confidence, individuality, work in collaboration, completing the desired goal. Last one is feedback. Feedback may be internal or external. Feedback is given by the teacher. Ask learner to do more practice and overcome his or her weaknesses and develop and enhance their knowledge and skill, and this cycle starts again. So these were the four stages of learning process. There are 8 steps for completing the learning process, which are goal, readiness, situation, interaction, responses, results, reaction to thwarting and participation. Let's see one by one in detail. Very first one is goal. Everybody has a goal in his or her life. He or she does anything to reach at that goal because he or she feels satisfaction. So many desires is to be filled. Goal is the very first step in the process of learning. Second one is readiness. Learning occurs when an individual is physically and mentally ready for it. After setting goal, learner must be prepared for it. Readiness includes physical strength and mental preparation and experience of the past. A learner should be prepared for learning by love and affection, not by the operation. Third one is situation. It is the third step in the learning process. It provides the way of getting learning. If a situation does not allow to get goal, then he or she must change and uses spatial behavior to get this situation. Fourth one is interaction. Learning enhances with the help of different activities. Interaction of the child is different from the adult. Every individual works according to his or her own interaction. Fifth one is responses. Individual adapt different ways to achieve his or her goals. After the interaction of situation, he or she tests the different ways on different aspects. Individual adopt a way according to the response or result of these tests. Results confirms the interaction or rejects it. Learning depends on the satisfaction of the individual. He or she gets in his activities satisfaction or dissatisfaction satisfaction depend upon the result or conclusion. Seventh one is reaction or thwarting. Some results are not according to the goal and the individual fails to get his or her goal. After failure, he or she do evaluation and changes his behavior and ideas, which provides new steps to proceed further. Last one is participation. It means in learning, active sharing means the active sharing or involvement of the student in the process of learning. No effective learning without proper participation of students. So these were the 8 steps by which learning process complete. Let's move towards learning curve. The achievement in learning in relation to time factor will be plotted to form a curve called learning curve. The process of learning any motor skills to type, to learn, to play on a musical instrument, so on are plotted. They are a particular shape. The achievement improves fairly rapidly in the early stages. It is termed as initial spurt in learning. The curve steadily goes up. A certain stage we find that the curve does not show any progress for some time. Instead of going up, the curve is almost horizontal. There is no progress at all. This part of the curve is technically known as the plateau. But after some time, if the learning process has been going on, the curve again rises up, showing further improvement. This is the secondary spurt in learning. Finally, there is a limit for the learning curve, and it is not possible for any individual to push the curve higher. This limit is set by the total physiological and psychological condition of the organism. The term learning curve firstly used by Barian and Harter in 1909. Psychologist Arthur Bills proposed a more detailed description of learning curve and its types in 1934. Learning curve shows the rate of progress or improvement in learning. A learning curve is a graphical representation which is drawn to represent the progress of learning of an individual in a given time. Learning curve is a graphical representation of how learning takes place in a particular situation. The achievement in learning in relation to time factor will be plotted to form a curve called learning curve. The process of learning any motor skills to type, to learn, to play on a musical instrument and so on are plotted. They take a particular shape. The achievement improves fairly rapidly in the early stages. It is termed as initial spurt in learning. This curve steadily goes up. At a certain stage, we find that the curve does not show any progress for some time. Instead of going up, the curve is almost horizontal. There is no progress at all. This part of the curve is technically known as plateau. But after some time, if the learning process has been going on, the curve again rises up, showing further improvement. This is secondary spurt in learning. Finally, there is a limit for the learning curve, and it is not possible for any individual to push the curve higher. This limit is set by the total physiological and psychological condition of the organism. Depending upon the nature of the material and nature of learner involvement, curves form differently in their shape. There are 4 types of learning curve: straight line curve, negatively accelerated learning curve or convex learning curve, positively accelerated learning curve or concave learning curve, combinations of convex and concave curve. First one is straight line curve. A uniform rate of progress in learning is represented by a straight line curve. This type of curve is seldom found as it shows constant rate of improvement in terms of material learned correctly or in terms of reduction of errors per trial. Second one is negatively accelerated curve or concave curve. If the rate of progress is very high at the beginning, then slow down gradually, it is called negatively accelerated learning curve. It depicts a rapid initial improvement when the task is very simple or when the learner has previous practice and slows down with the time if the learner loses interest in learning due to its simple nature. Next one is positively accelerated curve or concave curve. If the rate of progress is very slow at the beginning, it increases, it is called positively accelerated learning curve. If the task is new or difficult, the curve at the beginning is slow but increases with time, leading towards the mastery over material or content. The challenging task involves the learner and makes him struggle and thus increases learner's enthusiasm. Last one is the learning plateau or plateau in learning. It is a low, flat, horizontal stretch in learning curve which represented a stationary stages where apparently no progress in learning is recorded. Plateau in learning represents period periods in learning process when no improvement occurs even with any number of plateaus. Let's see the causes of learning plateau. Poor or faulty method of working or learning, physical or mental fatigue, complex part of the task if dealt with, loss of interest in learning the task, lack of motivation, lack of attention or distraction, lack of interest, old habits of dealing if they are in conflict with new habits of dealing with the task, old habits of dealing if they are in conflict with the new habits of dealing with the task, transition from a lower level of performance to a higher level of performance, inability to pick up new methods of learning in place of the old methods, physical or mental illness, poor or unfavorable working environment, boredom in the task at hand, learner satisfaction with moderate achievement, inadequate pacing or too big gaps between the tasks, increased difficulty of related tasks. So these are the causes of learning plateau. Let's see the overcoming strategies of learning plateau. Bad habits such as inadequate study, too large gaps between the learning traits are to be eliminated consciously. Awareness of a purpose of learning and clear goals motivate the learners. Arrangement of learning material according to the increasing level of difficulty by teacher facilitates learning. Adapting suitable method of teaching different topics, either easy or difficult, keeps up interest of learner. Minimizing exterior disturbances to the possible extent. Provide incentives for the stages of achievement. Praise the student for their hard work. People can be encouraged to clarify their doubts, discuss the difficult parts and review in different ways, in writing, orally to others or by himself or herself. So these are the overcoming strategies of learning plateau. Let's see the characteristic of learning curve. Curves of learning may also be of such type which are concave in form and show slow initial progress. Such curves, not as common as the convex type, are quite often found. The slow initial improvement is often on account of the fact that the learner finds difficulty in having a general pattern of performance and acquiring such responses which are helpful in the performing of the task. This means learner faces difficulty in understanding the task and the responses which it requires, thus his or her speed of learning slow down. Later on, this understanding draws up on him or her and there is a steady progress. Such curves are those which represent the progress in learning the contents of history, mathematics, etc. Such curves are positively accelerated. Another characteristic which may be noted in the learning curve is that it shows period of no progress at any point throughout its length. These periods of no progress are known as plateaus of learning. In learning curves, sudden spurts of rapid learning also visible. This situation is visible everyday life. Often a person practices at the tennis court for quite long period and suddenly he learns how to serve best so that score a point and then proceed steadily towards further progress. These sudden spurts of rapid learning usually occur after the periods of no progress. In almost all the curves of learning, it may be noted that progress in learning is irregular. The curves are usually characterized by short time fluctuations. During learning, there may occur changes from day to day in the material which is being learned, in the total environment and in the individual who is learning. These changes affect the learner's progress. For example, if the learner is sick or bored or dejected, his or her learning will suffer. If the environment in which he or she is learning has distracting influence, his learning will also suffer. On all days in a week, he is not in the same mood to learn and hence there occurs fluctuation in his learning. The curves of learning shows that there reaches a limit beyond which no improvement is possible. In certain tasks, their limits of improvement are enforced upon the learner by his own nature or the type of task which he or she is performing. The teacher should be cautious that the child is not asked to show progress in learning beyond his or her capacity. For example, in the case of any individual, a limit in the speed in handwriting can be reached, beyond which the figure will not be moved. It is useless for the teacher to force the child to learn beyond that limit. So these are the characteristics of learning curve. Let's see the limitation of learning curve. All the curves have the property of exact quantitative expressions. Curve of improvement or acquisition of knowledge, appreciation, etc. are unreliable because of the determination of exact unit in such material is practically impossible. For this reason, we have no reliable curves for learning of languages, history, geography and ordinary school subject in general. Even if objective, tests, scales and other refined instrument of measuring knowledge should enable us to approximate the skill curves, the result would be far from representative or typical. Another limitation from which learning curves suffer is that the composite curve, which brings together the achievements of many individuals and which are so frequently used in experimental studies of motivation, transfers, etc., disregards individual learning and other differences peculiar to the situation in which learning takes place. So these are some limitations of learning curve. Let's move towards the educational implication of learning curve. Learning curves are of quite a great significance in providing proper guidance in learning. Their utility can be as follows. The curves are useful as rough generalization of the rate of progress. It may be remembered they do not provide specific information about any learning process. But for a teacher, their utility is great because their help he or she is able to locate the rate of progress, as well as he or she can notice the regularity or irregularity of progress and the relation of progress to increasing difficulty of the material. The teacher gets the information of Plato. Formation can be avoided by proper method of work, correct organization of learning material and providing correct incentives. It is particularly necessary in the early stages of learning to detect errors which, if allowed to persist, may become difficult to break and may impact progress. These curves of learning are helpful in detecting some in such errors. Whenever there is a plateau formation, the teacher can make appraisal of the method of learning of the child, can improve matters. Learning curves gives an idea about the performance and progress of learners. Plato makes the teacher alert about their role, particularly to suit the situation. Learners can know how they are in their rate of learning and understand why they are fast or slow, and can thereby help themselves, and they can be cautious about the plateaus. Teacher can build up or revise learning environment or avoid disturbances or check students attention and motivate the students for learning. So these are the educational implication of learning curve. So in this way, today we learnt about the learning process, stages of learning process, which are perceiving, deciding, acting and feedback. 8 steps of learning process, that are goal, readiness, situation, interaction, responses, result, reaction to thwarting and participation. And the learning curve, different types of learning curves, causes of learning plateau, overcoming strategies of learning plateau, characteristics and limitation of learning plateau, and educational implication of learning plateau. So thank you one and all.